Speaking of options,
Okay.
BC, we're going to do this exercise later where DB and I try and nail down a two deep. And so I wanted to ask you, you don't have to do the whole two deep right now, but I'm curious what position or position group you think is going to be the most challenging. And if it is defensive backs, I want your second place as well.
Yeah, I would say defensive backs just because like when you talk about the corners, like I can name off like kind of 3 through 6, but I don't know exactly how they would slot them. I don't. Damon might have a better feel than I do on that, but that I think Jeremiah Charles was at a good camp. Like Amari Sanders was a name that popped up a lot in the offseason. Donovan Jones has been moving around, and they said he was at corner last I knew. So cornerback after the top two is pretty interesting to me.
And I think you have to go boundary field too. Like I think the boundary corners are.
I mean, what name did I leave off? I left.
I think for boundary, I would go with Marshall and Jones, D Jones on that side. I think on the field corner, I would go obviously Sierra Wright, and this is tough. I'll go Sierra, JJ, Amari in that order. Is that a bold take? Yeah, I'll go.
I don't know that it's. I know.
Yeah, I'll go Sierra, JJ, Amari in that order to the field.
Yeah, I don't think that's.
But boundary, I'll go Marshall and Donovan Jones.
Yeah, I don't think that's a hot take. Who's third behind Donovan Jones?
I don't know. Gets as a boundary corner.
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't know. Somebody could flip over.
Do you use one of the other guys?
But those guys got to be. I mean, you got to be. I mean, boundary's boundary. You're gonna have to fit in the run game. Sometimes you got to set edges. I don't know. I think those are the two boundaries.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if I don't know enough to go deeper.
Yeah. Besides the DBs, I guess. I bet linebackers kind of interesting too, just with some of the freshmen that are popping up, like into the mix. And, Marquez Watson Trent was up there the other day and he's talking about, man, some of these freshmen, they play at a better level than, I've seen freshmen play. And so he's mentioned that's like Merritt and Christian Jones and, obviously Bowers in that mix as sort of a backup guy. And, so how they kind of iron that out and what exactly it looks like on paper. And I think this is a year where you got to be careful when the paper comes out, if it does, like Friday or whatever, and you see it, online. It just be careful with it, I think, because it just feels like there's so many different mixing and matching combinations they can do. It's not like a depth chart that I think is easily just put down in black and white necessarily.
That's kind of the vibe I got from Phil Simpson in his answer, right? When he was talking about the Jackson stuff about their individual traits. Was that kind of your takeaway?
Yes. He said that, all different skill sets, same shared goal, basically. And so that there's going to be you could put on paper, this guy is maybe going to get more snaps or we have a few more things for him than this other guy. But the bottom line is they need all three of those guys we've talked about at that position throughout and maybe more. So honestly, it's a great question you asked about what are you wondering about? Because, that you can go to each level on that defense and then get into a conversation, like who's the fifth guy on the D-line necessarily. And, is Jalen George, who's been in a green jersey most of the offseason, how ready or game shape is he, even though they love him, obviously, in his personality. So he's got to show that, I suppose.
Do you look at him different because he's older? Pet Shot, Hofkin, and those guys, and even Keona Day, those are younger guys, right?
Could be.
You look at George differently because he's older?
Yeah, it could be. I've been just waiting for that. Like every time we popped over there, that green jersey was on. It's like, man, I just want to see him full go because I was excited as him being a possible depth piece. So the fact that, it's because he's been asked about, but when you heard Matt Rhule talk about him and Jameer Khan, on Saturday and just the glowing compliments for the way they go about their business. I mean, those are guys that are going to factor in at some point. And
I can appreciate Khan's competitive stamina because he hasn't always been healthy. And it's, he came in, he had to get some work done. Like I could, and in that position group, BC, I can respect the fact he's hung in there emotionally when he wasn't always able to get reps because it's very, very competitive on that back end.
You know what I love the most? The had like 3 portal guys come up the other day. Khan, McCullough was one of them, and I can't remember the
Watson,
other.
Was it
Watson Trent was up.
Yeah, Watson Trent.
Yeah, I just wrote about him. My mind is like mush at this point with all the different ways we've gone with storylines, but all those guys just present themselves. And I know it's a press conference, whatever, but they have a pros pro way about them that, like, when you go back to Matt Rhule's initial comments, like even earlier in the year, like right after they got some of these additions, and just talking about gratitude and how some of these guys just have a hunger for the game. And it does come out sometimes more in others in the way they can speak about it and communicate that. And I felt like all of those guys this week kind of had me nodding my head like, man, I see why. Like if they popped in for a visit in December or January when you're deciding who do I put on this roster, there's a lot in their mindsets that you would say, let's go with that. And I can get a lot done. So it does not surprise me after hearing all these guys kind of come up and hearing Rhule 7-8 months ago talk about what they were looking for. And then you combine that with John Butler saying how he really thinks they've batted a high clip with all those portal guys and they're going to help in all these different spots. It really computes, especially like a week like this when you see those guys and how they're able to just present themselves.
BC, what is there a position? Let's talk about kind of the counterpoint. A position where you don't think whatever the depth chart says matters nearly as much as what we actually read.
I mean, maybe DB, maybe O-line.
I didn't think of that one. You could talk me into DBs.
So DBs, you almost think like it could be, hey, like we've got veterans, we trust those guys. That's who it's going to be. It's not nearly as volatile as we think back there.
I was going to say Jacks.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's some good. Okay, I'm sorry. Finish the thought. I listen. It's one of those things where I asked the question, and I'm like, wait a minute. That's a good question. Even I don't want.
Answer why you say that Jacks. What
skill sets, because I think they all do a little something different that I think I would like. Right. I think Dylan Rogers is relentless. Right. Like he'd be really good at the point of attack because he's not going to go away. McCullough is kind of long and angular. Maybe he could get vertical on you. I think Ochoa is got really high upside, but is still kind of learning how to play it. McGahee is a big fact. He's a big, not boom or bust, because I think that implies negativity, but he's either making a splash play or you may use him as a teachable moment, right? So I think everybody does a little something different. So they may be the most situational. And, I mean, full disclosure, it's kind of what Simpson was telling us when he took the podium. So I'm going by what he says.
The only reason I said defensive backs, it's a boring answer. It goes back to the spring. It's Rhule saying we just want to play a lot of guys back there, basically. But it was, when he's saying we have like 6 corners we feel good about. We have 5 or 6 safeties we feel good about. And so I think more than any, that could be a position, especially where in September it could bounce around a little bit, right? Where guys could earn their keep when the lights are on a little bit more. And I just think that that's a spot where things could shift over the course of the season. I think, they have a lot of veterans, which you could maybe set on the first line right now. But I've been saying this all offseason. I think, and this is a good thing, they've gotten to the point where they have those second or third year guys in the program. And also when you think about like Andrew Marshall and Khan and these portal additions, where they're going to keep those top guys on their toes throughout. And that's the thing. That's the only point I'd make is this thing's fluid. It doesn't just stop Friday when a sheet of paper comes out and that's the way it is. This keeps going, and you see like, okay, who's got it when there's the live bullets, as they say, and who doesn't. And so that's why there's so many guys back there that are interesting that I'm very curious. Like when we get to Arrowhead, oh, he popped up in this scheme, or when they're playing this defense, that guy's out there suddenly. So I am very interested, like how many guys work themselves into the game the first week, and then how it goes from there.
So BC, you started to say a secondary answer as well, and I think it was going to be O-line.
Yes, it was.
And that's
interesting.
That's where
you were going to go.
That's where my head went, was because I think I know who the 5 best offensive linemen are. I could definitely be wrong, but I also think there's things that they want out of certain guys, maybe messages that they're trying to send certain guys. I mean, we heard Coach Rhule talk about Elijah Pritchett. Like at some point, that guy's going to be one of your starting tackles. I'd bet a decent amount of money on that.
I still think quietly that was one of his best answers.
Talking about Pritchett, and he's got a long way to go.
He said, BC, I don't want to ask a leading question because you're very smart. What were your thoughts on where Pritchett is currently versus how many days were left in? Like, how'd that message land with you from a leadership standpoint when you're trying to continue to build and encourage guys that you think can help you?
My initial thought is there's not a lot of time left in camp. Yeah, like when you're hearing a player who, he's just got to work through some stuff, and Donnie's got a little bit different system or technique than some other guys too, and I think that's a part that is also a piece of the conversation. But my first thought was, that's whenever a person, when he said he's got to go a little bit, he's got a ways to do some things with this and that, and you're 2 weeks out from the season, you're like, well, there's not a lot of time for that. But the other thing I'd say is, if you look at Rhule's track record going back to Temple, he has actually some amazing stories of guys that he has challenged, guys who even, I'm not computing with Pritchett, but other guys who have actually left, come back and been like guys who made it to the NFL and stuff. So he does have a great sense of how to motivate guys, how to handle that publicly, whatever their situation may be. He said a lot of people are pouring into Elijah, so there's a lot of people working with him. But I mean, that's a tough spot to just come in and just knock some of these guys out. I mean, there's guys who have been in this program 4 or 5 years. Gunnar Gatula, I thought last year, for what he was asked to do, considering he was like third team, like in early August or whatever it was, and then he's starting at left tackle. I thought he did almost as good a job as you could do in that kind of position for where he was in his career and that moment meeting it. And so it's not an unimpressive group that is competing against Elijah. So I thought ever since he got here, I thought like he's going to have to go earn it, because there's some guys, if they get everybody healthy, and sometimes in the spring we talk over guys too, like Prohaska and Corcoran, it's like they weren't there, or they're not going to be there, and it's like they might be at some point, and then it gets really interesting. And so the reason I also said O-line in my answer is because I always wonder at certain spots, if there was an injury and they got in a jam, would they necessarily go with the guy who might be listed on the second line at certain spots, or would someone shift? I think that's a position group where that you sometimes see that happen more.
BC, when is it I feel like I've heard kind of this reoccurring theme, and maybe it's more offense than defense, but you kind of hear this thing with Coach Holgerson, I'm sorry, about older guys, mature guys that have experience. I'm not trying to read into it, but I do think he said it on a few occasions where some of it was unsolicited. You think, how important do you ultimately think that is to him, especially given he's got such a young roster in some spots to begin with?
Well, I think it's a big deal because the advantage you should have, if you're like third, fourth, fifth year guy, is you can handle the basics a lot better than the guy who's first or second year, and you can line up right and some of that stuff. And Holgerson has also said, as crazy as it sounds, that's like, alignment. Like, that's the biggest thing. It's like get yourself in the right spot so we can use you. And you would expect those guys who have more miles behind them, have seen a few more things, to be able to do that at a better clip. It is an interesting setup too, isn't it, guys? When you play a tougher game, the opener, and you're in that setting like Arrowhead and all that, like, it isn't a deal where you can just go out there and you're playing some directional school the first week and you can just experiment all over the place. Like, I could see this first game in some ways being like, that experience factor is going to matter. You're going to need those guys, like whether we're talking defense or offense, who've been in this program and have been through some things in their career, like this first week, to step up and not have their not be quaking in their cleats or anything, and they just lead by how I'm not going to say lead by example. The Eckler would get after me, but this is how you do it in this setting. Let's go, guys. And I've been here and done that. So I could see where that first game experience especially could matter a lot. And then maybe you have a couple games that they would never say this publicly, nor should they, but maybe those will be the games where some guys can work themselves into spots that are younger. I don't know.
We're talking with Brian Christopherson, Husker247. BC, as we get closer, and I guess we're 8 days out at this point from the opening game. I've asked a couple people this, including at least one of your colleagues, and I'm curious because I feel like you process things a little bit differently than some people. Is there anything that you feel differently about now than you did when camp started?
Yeah, I need to answer a question. There's too much silence here. The people are listening. That's a good question.
That's where we need like the Jeopardy.
Yeah, you need
okay.
to fill it. I think. Let me just start listing off a couple things that pop into mind. Like I could start with QB. I think Latif has had a really great story this offseason to be like in the, like, at least the conversation, like making it a competition as sort of that backup. And I didn't necessarily think, if I went back to like December, I would not have guessed he'd be in this spot. And that's on me. Like, I don't know why. I was sort of in that crowd that probably talked over or looked past him a little bit. And I really like how he's just put his head down and gone. And so the fact that he's made it interesting, and gets talked about with Gramstad for that number 2 spot, that's something that has changed in my mind from spring and even until the beginning of August. Like, he's really in the thick of it here, as a backup option. So that I do buy more than some the running back confidence that is building within this coaching staff. And I say more than some because I think there's some fans, and I understand this point of view too, who are pretty skeptical of that. They're like, I got to see that. They should want to see it. But I don't know, Mackay and Mosey and some of those guys, just the way a seasoned coach like Dana Holgerson talks about them. And I know there's a part of it where it's like you're pumping guys up and stuff, but they've got some skill sets that can work. If they can get those detail items right, I think that can be a good position as this season goes along. So I think the confidence that has stacked up sort of at that position, I've kind of nodded my head to, probably more than some people.
So let me, BC, when you mentioned Eckler a little bit ago, what unit do you think benefits the most from the young depth that they're trying to establish and develop in Kansas City? Like, where do you think it reveals? What unit do you think it will reveal itself the quickest in terms of what Nebraska's building with their roster?
I think receivers, maybe.
And what unit? Like punt return?
Oh, it's special.
Yeah. Because I mean, that's usually where you see depth show up.
Okay.
Special teams.
Yeah. I think it's going to show up in the punt return game. I wasn't thinking special teams.
That'd be cool.
I think they're going to have some success there. Like, I know they have big goals and they want to lead the country. I thought the most interesting thing about when Eckler was talking about goals was wanting to just lead the country in attempts, he said at one point, in punt returns, and just the aggression that comes with that. And so I'm kind of taking the question a different route, but I just think that's going to be something that jumps out to us from what we've seen in the past, because we've been so used to that being a group where it's just like, just get the offense the ball, let that thing roll around, and like, let's go from there. And if that's the case and they really are shooting for that goal from week one, you're going to see a difference there of just like how they field punts, how they attack that and try to make something happen. And so that really is an interesting part going into the season, just because I think it's going to be such a contrast.
That's our guy, Brian Christopherson, Husker247. BC, we appreciate the time as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Yep. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, B.